we had 14 candidates going up for the parliamentary election in Tobago alone. There are 161 candidates in all across Trinidad and Tobago, but we have 14 of them here in Tobago, and quite a few of them have come on this program this morning, and we want to thank all of them so far. But we want to welcome our last candidate, Mr. David Thomas, and he is with the political party that is called the Tobago People's Party, and he is representing the Tobago East constituency. Mr. Thomas?
Good morning.
Yes, we are hearing you.
Hello.
Yes, we're hearing
good
you.
morning.
Good morning. Thank you for being here with us this morning.
It's my pleasure, and I would want to also give my best regards to the viewing public, both locally, regionally, and internationally, as well as the panel and all the persons at Tobago Updates.
Wonderful. Terry, I'm going to allow you to start the conversation. I don't want to monopolize, right? So I'm going to allow you to start the conversation, but I just wanted to give Mr. Thomas an opening to tell us what's your perspective on gender equality in Tobago, especially, even though we're looking at it on the national level.
Well, I think that gender equality it has been a hot topic. I think is something that is really, really critical to our development. And it is an area that we need to open all the discussions, explore all the variables, and at the end of the day, come up with a best fit policy and a best fit system that would benefit all the genders that exist in the space.
Thank you for that response, Mr. Thomas, and welcome. Thank you for joining us. And that's a wonderful opening for my next question. It's a lovely segue into the lack thereof of a gender policy as we know it. When you are elected, how would you ensure that there is a gender policy that we're all operating under in both Trinidad and Tobago? And I'm giving deference to Tobago, of course. We're focusing on Tobago in part one of our discussions, but by extension, Trinidad as well. How would you ensure that a gender policy is in place for all of us? And what would that look like?
Well, let me thank you for your endorsement because you did see elected, and that to me it fits into the faith I have going forward. But I would go along the lines of consultation on the national front, because you must know that a lot of times we put policies and systems in place in this country, and we see it happening elsewhere as well. And there isn't public consultation done in a meaningful sense, where we allow all the people to make their contributions, and we take close note of those contributions so as to amalgamate all the views, and then
Yeah, as technology is, it does what it does. We have no control. But I have to agree with what he was saying. That is candidate Mr. David Thomas, who is with the Tobago People's Party, going up for the Tobago East constituency. And while we're waiting to see if he comes back on, I think we were talking about policies, whether they're going to be local or national. And when we look at parliamentary elections, we're always going to be talking about a national focus. We're always going to be talking about a unified state. And I definitely like the direction the conversation is heading in with Mr. Thomas. But we are also looking at the fact that we have 26.6%, and I'm being told that Mr. Thomas's connection has dropped, right?
Oh,
But we have
fortunately.
26.6% of women in the parliamentary election for 2025. So
Yeah,
if we were to round that to 27%, right, we are looking at something that is not in the realm of a 50-50
yeah,
proportionate representation, Terry. So
yeah,
what we're looking at is how do we get to that 50-50? And this 26.6% is something that we are seeing is a high number based on where we've come
yeah,
from. But how do we get
yeah,
it to even to 30 and beyond? And with that, I want us to close the conversation. But
yeah.
talk to us, Terry, in terms of your work, in terms of what you've been doing. What do you see as something that the candidates, potential member of parliaments, can put in place when they get there to make
Yeah.
sure that this 26.6667% that we have of women going up for parliamentary election 2025 looks closer to a 50%?
Yeah, that's a great point, Jewel, and I'm glad you raised it. When I disaggregated the numbers by party, when I went by the individual parties, and particularly the larger, when I say larger, the parties that are fielding the larger amount of candidates, one political party is close to 50%, only one. And it's not the majority party that we are familiar with. The others hover around high 20s, 29 and 33, around there. And then of course you have the 1 1 1 1. So it's hard to add those up. When you pull them all together, many of those ones are males. So then you see the skew happening. So you see the percentage dropping, right? When you add it all up. Um, when you get a totality of the candidates and you do the math, you come up with the number that you shared, the 27%. What have we done in the past, or what has been done in the past? Well, many parties, and I remember back in 2015, the party that won that election went into the election with around 30, a high 30 percentage of women candidates. And also, when the party won, they had a high number of women candidates as MPs. So at that point, we saw around 33%, which was the highest we had, close to 33%, was the highest we had ever seen in Trinidad and Tobago. Of course, over the course of the 5 years, there are shifts within the parliament, or people are moved from one portfolio to another, and you saw the numbers dropping. What we do as civil society is encourage the political parties to field women candidates, and not just field them, put them allow them opportunities where they can actually win. Because what we also saw is, like, while many women candidates were being fielded by some political parties, they were fielding them in constituencies where there were absolutely no hope of women winning in those constituencies, but they were putting them up there as the candidate. So again, it has to be a fair and equitable playing field. Having
Yes.
said that, now once we get into political office, now let's say everything is done as it should be, and there are a good representation of women in all of the political parties that are now in parliament. Let's caucus as women. Across the aisle, let's caucus on issues that disproportionately negatively impact women, and ensure that these issues are being brought to the front, like the first candidate spoke of. making sure those issues are brought to the front so that everybody has an opportunity to now discuss it, vote on it, and move it forward for our society. We have to, at some point, put the party aside. Once we get into political office, once we are elected officials, we are elected to support or to represent the entire electorate. We're not there just to represent one party. And unfortunately, we still see too much of that at the highest level, meaning the elected officials. And so we need to, and it's up to us, in my opinion, it's up to us in civil society, it's up to us as citizens to demand better. We cannot continue to accept what we get as representation. What we get oftentimes is not representation for us, for our issues. We need to demand better. And I think when that voice, that consolidated voice comes in a crescendo, I do think that people would hear. I do think we would start seeing a change, but all of us have to start speaking as one voice. There are things that we ought to be able to agree on. It would not be everything. We understand that. There are at least 5 things I can think of right off the top of my head. Better education, let's start there. And not just education at the higher level. Let's start with access to kindergarten and early education, and throughout primary school, secondary school, junior secondary, high school, and college and beyond. Let's improve our education systems. I heard one person recently was talking about education, and the person said that the person's problem was that there were more prestige schools in the West than the East and the South, and she felt that there need to be prestige schools it would be more equitable. And my position is every single school in this country should be a prestige school. Yeah. And if we're not considering that as the goal, then we're missing the point. Because what do you say to your child that is not attending one of those schools that they attending a
not good enough.
school?
Yeah.
So we have to change our consciousness. We have to, when we talk about equity, we have to really understand what equity means for everybody. Inclusivity means everybody. It's not just depending on where you are in your geography. It's everybody. And so we need to start agreeing on these basic things in Parliament where the decisions are being made, and the populace must demand it of our representatives while they're campaigning today. Now, between now and the 28th, ask these tough questions. And when they answer those questions, hold them to account when they get elected. That is our power. We must exercise our power. We must. Yeah. Otherwise, we're on a very...
Yes, I don't mean to cut you, but I heard you say some very important things, and as we wrap up right now, I just want to make sure that we put a push pin on these things, right? And you talked about women caucuses, right, which I think is completely relevant to the atmosphere that we're in right now of election. And when we look at women caucuses, their ability to effect great leaders, the ability to effect proportionate representation for women, and to give even the playing field, because I don't think the female electorate sometimes understands that they are powerful in their vote. It's one man, one vote. And when we say one man, obviously we're looking at one human being. One person, one vote. And therefore, women out there, we're speaking to you directly. Do not abdicate your responsibility as a duty bearer, as a change agent, to go to the polls and exercise your right. And please make sure that when you choose your candidates, they are supporting issues that are going to affect you and your generation positively. Not just, a single parent conversation, but a general conversation. Where are we going to be in the next 5 years in terms of our financial inclusion, in terms of our wealth? So women out there and men, don't forget that you can have these conversations as well as allies. But women out there, please remember that you have that voting power to effect change and to be a change maker in your community. We are usually involved in the ground level grassroots of CSOs and NGOs. And that's sometimes where we don't activate most of our power. So just putting it out there for women. Don't forget female caucuses in terms of, across the political divide. Don't just look at, what color my party is wearing today, but look at what the issue is that's going to benefit us in Tobago, in Trinidad and Tobago as a nation, what's going to benefit us as women. So we're going to close
and
off
one
there.
last thing I will
Yes,
add,
go ahead,
and
Terry.
one last thing I would add is when women are elected and they're in those positions of decision making, we should support them. We should help them do better. If if there are things that they're falling short on, write to them gently, let them know, and offer solutions to them, help them. And we should be doing it to all of our elected officials, quite frankly, not just the women. But since we're talking about women and how we get to 50-50 and equal or more representation, we need to support them when they get elected, because the election is just the first step. Really, it
Correct.
really is just the first step. So once they get elected, let's support them.
And we're gonna close with
yes.
that. Yeah, support the women candidates and support them when we elect them. Let's continue that positive support to make sure that we have parity and 50-50 representation. We want to thank our viewers. Yes, we want to thank our viewers for sticking with us. I know it was quite a display of different plans and different, focuses from our candidates. We've been here for quite a while. We want to thank the viewers for sticking with us here on Women Voters Matter Part 1. And we also want to thank, obviously, Tobago Updates for the space to be able to have this conversation as we head into the polls on April 28th. And we just want to let you know, voters out there, you have the power right here in this finger. Don't forget, as you head to the polls, get the issues clear in your mind and figure out what's happening in your community so you can do the best for your community and for the nation and your village. Thank you for being with us here today, and we look forward to seeing you when we have part 2.
Thank you. Thank you, Jewel. Thank you, Tobago Updates.